actually engage with you is an issue. You know, at the moment, the contractors are being able to pay a deluge with work in some sectors, and you know, there is more tendering effort, you know, in this type of arrangement than if you present them with a partial or a completed design, and will they turn away from your project, even though you're trying to encourage all this, the innovation from the supply chain. That does require them to do a lot of consultation with their own supply chain. The evaluation of the tenders can be quite complex when you've got all these different proposals on the table. Are you, comparing like with like? Can you be certain you're going to get the performance that you would like? I would argue you're probably more likely to see ambiguities, between the employer specification and potentially the bids that come in, where later on they may try and, rein back in and say, well, we didn't quite allow for that, or we didn't quite envisage that's what you're after. And the second last point, I suppose we do see a disconnect between, people that are making decisions on construction costs and those that are responsible for running assets, running the building, and might maybe a different budget where, the whole life value, the whole life costing is difficult to apply in those scenarios. But so yeah, definitely a good way of encouraging innovation and hopefully getting different proposals that give you good value, but not always appropriate, I would say.
Right, just moving on to cost modelling and benchmarking, and I would like to think this is something that most people would do anyway, and it is back to common sense. But again, it's really good reminder that you should be looking at your cost benchmarks, your historic data that you have when you're looking at new programs, how they were delivered, how they went, greenhouse gas emissions, etc. We're trying to reduce carbon, so see what was successful, and it's sort of a lessons learned. And I can understand why they put it in there, because again, often a project team will drive forward and not look at what they've done in the past and not sort of step back as they should. The second one, and I'm going to be interested in what Fergus comments on this about cost modelling, is that in central government, departments should refer any abnormally low bid as more than 10% lower than the average of all bids, or the should cost model, which is what government uses, to Cabinet Office prior to accepting it. And yeah, 10%. Fergus, comments?
Yeah, I think we know where you're going with this one, Steve. It's that can just be within the normal spread of pricing, I would say, and everybody's probably aware of how the market is at the moment with pricing. Quite a vast difference in pricing levels. So yeah, I mean, but when you do an estimate for a project, you do benchmarking, don't you? So there's some elements of the playbook with, they're just repeating things that everybody's doing, I guess, at the moment. So this whole section isn't probably new to most people, but so yeah, I do question that 10%, and but it is just on my last point, focusing on whole life cost, whole life carbon. Certainly I think a lot of people again are familiar with whole life costing, but maybe not so much the whole life carbon assessment. So it'll be interesting to see the expertise and awareness around that. And that's one thing. If I was going to be doing something, I'd want to be looking at the benchmarking and doing a bit more work on how others are doing these things to address that one. Thanks, Steve. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. So just moving on to the delivery model approach now, and so looking at your delivery model, your DMA is obviously important on how you structure your project or your program, and it really includes a lot of the factors we've been through on the previous slides, and also so when you're looking at market capability, MMC, etc., on all the previous slides, and then other things is looking at best value, looking at your value profile. Now, your value profile is something that you get from the Construction Innovation Hub value toolkit that I mentioned previously, and obviously risks, etc., looking at client and market factors, and they're all potential, includes potential delivery models on how you take that forward. Fergus?
Yeah, this sort of section, as I said, appears to be specifically written for government, and when I was looking at this first time, it put me in mind of Prince 2, Steve. I'm a Prince 2 practitioner, and when you initiate a project, you're looking at things like the project approach, project brief, business case, and it put me in mind of that there's a lot of work goes into making sure you're delivering a project in the right way, because a lot of people just it's another project, we'll just do it in the way we've always done it. But what this is getting at is you need to be looking at doing a lot more assessment of before making that decision on how to do it. And just Steve, as an aside, again on the Prince 2 theme, I know I'm going a bit off script here. I actually did a bit of a search for Prince 2 in the document. I don't think I found any matches, which surprised me a bit, given that there used to be a lot of emphasis on within government on delivering using Prince. So even I was quite surprised there wasn't any reference to some of the guidance that is out there on Prince. So anyway, that was just to say it was a bit of an aside, but I brought it in because it, as I say, the delivery model assessment reminded me of some of the things that Prince required you to do.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Fergus. So just moving on, and unfortunately I've lost the header on my slide, and have you got that blocked off as well?
It says effective contracting number 10.
Thank you.
Number 10 of 14.
Thank you. So effective contracting. So this comes about looking at the form of contract, and obviously there's various forms that some mentioned at the bottom: NEC, JCT, ACA, etc. So the form of contract can be very relevant to what you're doing, the outcomes approach, your overall strategy, and your commercial approach. Because as an organisation, there are certainly different views on the commercial approach. There's the different views on risk and where risk sit, etc. And what government have been doing is they've been trialling a project scorecard of KPIs, looking at outcomes, etc., continuous improvement, covering design. And what that allows them to do is contractors who are performing well can carry on working with them, and contractors who aren't performing quite so well may not be offered future opportunities. It's the same way we work at YORhub. We have KPIs that do something very similar. So there's flexibility to consider various delivery methods, including frameworks and alliancing. Fergus, anything to add?
No, I think a lot of this, as I've said, reflects what's happening at the moment. Are the boilerplate clauses published, Steve? I'm showing a bit of ignorance here.
They weren't last time I looked. No, thank you for pointing that out. The boilerplate clauses came from discussion with the contractors at the steering group, and they was commenting that some departments have different clauses when really they're all in construction. And if you're working for a different department, you've got to double check all the clauses, because obviously it affects your tender and what you're accepting. And they made a request, can't we have standard clauses across government? Sure. And there was agreement with that. So we're now having these boilerplate model clauses that all the departments should be using. And I suspect when they're published, if they haven't been yet, there'll be something that a lot of us will want to be using, because if they're suitable for government, I suspect a lot of them won't be suitable for private and public sector clients. And again, it makes it very easy for the contractor to know what they're taking on and know what risks they're taking on, because we're all working to the same standards. So it makes a really good degree of sense.
I'd quite like to see those, Steve, because I think that commonality clarity around additional clauses has got to be a good thing for the supply chain. Just blowing our own trumpet here, Steve. There is guidance in the playbook around tender exercises and good practice. We've got very good guidance document on what a good tender looks like, which we'd be happy to share with the people listening in today. So I was just going to say that it's something we developed with the contractors. We said what's a good view in your eyes, what's a good tender, and also with our own views. I think we've come together with quite a well balanced document. So we've got our own guidance on that one. Back to you, Steve.
Right. So just a little bit on risk management, and just aware of time. The last few slides. We are in the end now, are a little bit shorter. So one of the things contractors have flagged up is that they find it's common for a lot of clients, public and private, to dump the risk on them and not really think about who's best placed to carry that risk. And if all the risk goes on the contractor, they will price for it, and you're paying for it regardless of whether it happens. You're paying for their allowance, and often clients or other people may be better placed to actually handle and manage that risk. So it's just flagging up that you should be thinking about risk generally, and joint working with the whole construction team.
Yeah, Steve, I'll just echo that, but I've not actually highlighted and bear the risk. I think that's a very good point, because there's no point in handing a risk over to a contractor at a small firm that may not be able to bear that risk if it unfortunately comes about. My only comment, I suppose, in addition to yours, was we do see that in the risk management that some people take advantage of it, and if they're not careful, especially things like ground conditions, where contractor may try and dilute their risk profile. They try and they get it recorded in the risk register, but actually in doing so you're altering the terms of the contract. So it just needs a degree of care, and also in local government context, do people have the authority to be accepting some of these risks, because with those risks there's often a financial aspect to it as well.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So payment mechanisms. This is really about paying promptly, and a lot of this goes back to Brilliant, really. And when you pay, linking it to delivery of outputs, etc. One of the things flagged up by the contractors is they're finding that a lot more clients are asking for an unlimited liability, and on the whole, that is unreasonable request to make and unnecessary. And so people really need to be more informed about liability and to put in the contracts, because anything you put in, it is going to be priced, and there will be a cost for it. And generally, there's recognition that contractors should make a profit. If we want to work with them, we want to work in collaboration, we want them to give us good ideas, we have to accept as clients that they should be able to make a reasonable profit, and that is the norm. That is the way industry works, and there's nothing wrong with that. Fergus.
I'll just add project bank accounts, Steve. East Riding, we've been using project bank accounts for quite a number of years, and I think that's a good way to go, to make sure that the supply chain are all paid at the same time as the main contractor. And also, in terms of, we'll come on to it, but in terms of just supplier failure, project bank account, contractor failure, project bank account can assist that process in transferring the subcontractors who have been paid through the project bank onto the new contractor who may well end up finishing off delivery of that project.
Right, so that leads us nicely on to, so thank you for that, for financial standing, the assessment of financial standing to suppliers. there is really good guidance note that government have produced, which we've put a picture of it there, and it's just flagging up the emphasis also on checking the ability of firms to pay their supply chain promptly. And even though you may ask for back-to-back contracts or with payment within 30 days, is that actually happening in practice? And the difficulty with financial assessments is you're looking at accounts on the whole, accounts produced by a contractor, he's paid a firm to do that, and they're all backwards looking. And actually knowing their current status can be problematic. Fergus?
Yeah, not really much to add on this one, Steve. It's a hard one to crack, this one, isn't it? Because as you say, lots of the assessments are backward looking rather than forward looking. We subscribe to credit safe. This is the way of giving us a daily update on the status of firms. But we've seen it that firms, even with firms with a high credit safe score, have gone bust. So even that isn't enough. So yeah, definitely worth looking at that guidance.
Yeah, thank you. And the final policy point, again, was looking at ways of dealing with that. So as part of your mitigation, really, a lot of contractors go under. We had North Midlands who went under last year, doing a fair bit of work for different authorities and private clients in the area. So it should be part of your mitigation plans to expect the tier 1 to go under and have plans in on how you deal with that. It could be bonds, guarantees. Project bank account means the supply chain have been paid directly, and it makes it easier to continue to work with them. Just aware of time, so I will hand over to Fergus.
Yeah, not much to add, Steve. I have been involved in setting up bonds and guarantees, and one guarantee took me 5 months to get the wording agreed with the various legal departments. Bonds, not a massive fan in the sense that they cost a lot of money and take a while to set up, and often calling them in